Evan still remembers the way the conference room felt that evening. The lights were dim, the air was tense, and Olivia sat across from him with a smirk like she had already won. She tapped her fingers on the table, leaning back as if she were bored. "Honesty and loyalty," she said. "That's cute. Those things only exist in fairy tales." Evan didn't look away. He could feel the shift in the room, the silent challenge hanging between them. "Maybe," he replied, "but fairy tales always have a villain. And sooner or later, the truth shows up to collect." Olivia raised an eyebrow, amused, not realizing the storm she was walking into. Evan knew she thought she could outmaneuver everyone with charm and borrowed ideas. But what she didn't know was that the evidence was already building. And this time, the ending wouldn't be in her favor. When Olivia first joined the team, everyone was impressed by her resume. She had this polished LinkedIn-perfect profile filled with glowing recommendations, big-name projects, and phrases like drove innovation and architected large-scale systems. People whispered about how lucky the company was to get someone like her. On her first day, she walked in with confidence, greeting everyone with a warm smile and a voice that felt practiced, like she had rehearsed it in the mirror. She immediately started chatting with Evan, asking about the system architecture, ongoing projects, and the team's workflow. At first, it felt refreshing to have someone new who was eager to learn. She asked questions constantly. She complimented everyone's work. She brought coffee for the team twice that week. No one expected that the friendliness was simply camouflage. Olivia's behavior didn't just continue, it evolved. What used to be small, awkward moments turned into a strategy so subtle and polished that anyone who wasn't paying attention would think she was simply excelling. She started showing up earlier than most of the team, not to work, but to sift through the shared tasks and pick the ones with the highest visibility. The ones the managers cared about most. The ones that made her look brilliant if she presented them well. Once she had selected her targets, she would casually walk by someone's desk, asking questions that sounded harmless. "What do you think about this data pipeline? Have you ever tried optimizing the caching layer like this?" She pretended to brainstorm, but what she really wanted was for others to reveal their approaches so she could repackage them. And she always took notes. Always. It was like watching a reporter gather material for a story she planned to put her name on. The worst part came when she started using private conversations as ammunition. Evan explained a concept to her one afternoon, an improvement to the back-end routing flow he'd been quietly experimenting with. She nodded along, asked him to clarify a few details, then returned to her desk. 2 days later, in a planning meeting, Olivia pitched the exact same idea word for word. She even used the same diagram Evan sketched on the whiteboard. When the manager asked where she got the insight, she smiled and said, "Just analyzing the logs and thinking proactively." Evan didn't react. He just sat there, feeling the heat rise behind his eyes while the team exchanged uncomfortable glances. Then things escalated. Olivia began targeting larger contributions, the things that shaped the direction of the entire system. She waited for people to finish their tasks, then swooped in at review time, claiming she had helped refine the final approach. Sometimes she pushed for pair programming, but turned it into a silent extraction session, absorbing ideas without giving anything back. Her timing was impeccable. Her delivery even more so. She always knew when management was within earshot. The turning point came when Evan shared a major architectural concept with her, a complete redesign of the authentication module. He didn't think much of it at the time. It was late, they were both exhausted, and he just wanted to wrap up for the night. But Olivia saw an opportunity. She replicated the entire thing into her own slides. She scrubbed any trace of Evan's structure except the core logic, which was impossible to change without breaking everything. And during the monthly review, she presented it as her personal innovation. Her tone was confident, her packing perfect, her words smooth and practiced. She even threw in a few jokes to make herself look relatable. By the time she finished, the room was applauding. After the meeting, Evan approached her. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just asked why she claimed something that wasn't hers. She gave him a look he had never seen before, sharp, unapologetic, almost amused. "Evan," she said, "ideas don't belong to people. They belong to whoever knows how to use them." Then she walked away, as if she had taught him a life lesson. But in that moment, Evan understood something important. She wasn't improvising. She wasn't accidentally taking credit. She was executing a plan, one perfectly aligned with the upcoming promotion cycle. And she was willing to step on anyone to climb higher. What she didn't know was that every step she took brought her closer to the edge. And Evan had stopped overlooking the signs. He had begun paying very, very close attention. Evan realized that confronting Olivia directly wouldn't work. She was too careful with her words, too skillful at twisting narratives, and too quick to act innocent when challenged. So he shifted his approach. He stopped arguing and started documenting. The first thing he did was organize every message she had ever sent him on Slack. Questions about features, requests for explanations, screenshots of his solutions she asked him to double-check. He stored them chronologically, making sure every timestamp was untouched. Next, he gathered email threads. There were several cases where she had forwarded his explanations to management, removing his name and phrasing them as her summaries. He copied everything into a private folder, labeling each item with the date and context. The moment the company secured the major security audit project, everything changed. It was the biggest contract of the quarter, the kind of assignment that could define someone's career, and leadership needed a face to put on it. Despite the quiet frustrations simmering within the team, Olivia's carefully crafted image paid off. She was chosen to lead the project. She accepted the role with a proud smile, acting surprised even though everyone could tell she'd been aiming for it from the moment she joined. Almost immediately, she began circling Evan like a shark sensing opportunity. She approached him with a friendly tone she hadn't used in weeks. "Hey, Evan, you've worked on authentication for years. Can you walk me through some of the older flows? Just to make sure everything is airtight before the audit." He answered vaguely at first, trying to maintain boundaries, but she kept pushing. A few hours later, she showed up again with a notebook and a laptop, pretending the questions were urgent. He declined to share the deeper parts of the architecture, sensing exactly what she was trying to extract. Her next move was more aggressive. She contacted one of Evan's former colleagues from a previous job, pretending she needed historical context on a specific encryption method Evan had designed. The colleague immediately reached out to Evan, confused about why some unfamiliar senior developer was digging into old security modules. That was the moment Evan realized how far Olivia was willing to go. When her attempts to gather information politely failed, she switched tactics. Deep inside one of the company's archived repositories, she found the remnants of a framework Evan had built years ago, an early proof of concept he never finished. She forked it quietly at midnight, then spent days modifying surface-level details to disguise where it came from. Variable names changed, comments removed, file structures rearranged. But the core logic and the unique algorithmic flow Evan had invented were still there, unmistakably his. Evan found out when he noticed unusual merge request activity linked to the project. The moment he opened the branch, he recognized the skeleton of his old code staring back at him. A mix of anger and dread settled in his stomach. If she deployed something she didn't understand, something experimental, incomplete, and untested, it wouldn't just be a professional insult. It could create a real security risk, a liability. And if it failed, the blame would land on the entire team, especially the one whose ideas she stole. He stared at the code for a long time, breathing slowly, thinking. Then a realization emerged like a cold, clean line cutting through chaos. If she wanted his work so badly, if she was determined to showcase something she never built, then the only way to expose her was to let her take exactly what she believed she could get away with. Not a trap to destroy her, a mirror to reveal her. The next day, he sent her a short message. I've been working on a refined version of that framework. If you still need a foundation for the security audit, I can put something together. She replied instantly, overly enthusiastic. That would be amazing, Evan. You're a lifesaver. She had no idea. She was walking straight into the consequence she had been building for months. Evan spent the next several days building a polished, well-structured framework, clean enough to impress anyone who looked at it, but with one crucial detail embedded deep inside. It wasn't a destructive flaw. It wasn't something that would crash the system or put real data at risk. It was a subtle vulnerability, the kind a careless developer would overlook, but any genuine architect would detect in minutes. It was the kind of flaw that exposed whether someone truly understood what they were presenting. He finished it, tested it, documented it, and then quietly removed a single protective check. Just one. Enough to prove intent. The aftermath of Olivia's exposure didn't end with her termination. It was only the beginning. Within hours, leadership initiated a full-scale review of every project she had touched since joining the company. They combed through pull requests, documentation, email threads, and presentation decks. What they found painted a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Several features she claimed credit for were actually built by other team members. Some designs she had innovated were copied from internal prototypes she barely understood. Even small performance improvements she bragged about were traced back to changes made by interns or junior developers. When everything finally settled, the office felt different in a way that couldn't be measured by policies or reports. People spoke more openly. Collaboration didn't feel like a gamble anymore. Ideas flowed without fear of being stolen or repackaged. Evan noticed it most during meetings. Team members looked at each other again instead of glancing over their shoulders. Trust, once cracked, had begun slowly rebuilding itself. Evan also carried something away from the whole ordeal. Not pride. Not victory. Just a reminder that integrity isn't naive, and honesty isn't a weakness. They're quiet principles, almost invisible until someone tries to break them. And when the dust clears, those who stood by them remain standing. As for Olivia, her story faded into the background of company memory, mentioned occasionally as a cautionary tale, but no longer a shadow lingering over the team. Her downfall wasn't caused by a trap or a rival. It came from the weight of her own choices, the debts she accumulated each time she put ambition above truth. In the end, the message was simple. Reputation takes years to build, but only moments to shatter. And the only foundation strong enough to survive those moments is authenticity.